Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Bite Size Podcast. I'm your host Clayton, and it has been a while. The last episode was post Man City, where I was very hungover, having a great time, and that was obviously pre Newcastle, pre transfer window closing. So there's a lot to talk about. We'll discuss the transfer window. It feels like there's a spectrum within the Arsenal fan base at the minute, where one end is it was a disgrace. The Cronkies have let Arteta down. Was there even a real intent to sign someone? Was the Watkins bit a smokescreen, etc., etc.? And the other end of that spectrum is, I think, some fans of the mindset and perspective of just wait until the summer to get the right targets. Really interested to talk through that. I don't even know where I land in that continuum, but as we talk through it today, I'm sure I'll figure out my opinion there. We have to talk about Newcastle. Obviously, we've lost twice to them 2-0. We exited the EFL Cup in the semi-final, and we'll talk a little bit Dubai and can we expect there? Can we expect a repeat of last season? But to recap all of that with me, delighted to welcome back Simon Collings to the pod. Simon, welcome back. How are you doing?
Hey mate, how you doing? I'm good. I'm all good.
I am good as well. I've seen you were out in Girona. You were in Newcastle. Did you not get the call up to Dubai?
I didn't get the call up to Dubai. I mean, that was the one I think I could have done with some warm weather sort of training and healing after how many games it was. Yeah, I mean, it's completely different for the players, for us as journalists and fans. But I actually kind of think for everyone, it's probably good. There was a little bit of break, particularly after that Newcastle game, which was pretty. It was pretty chastening, wasn't it? Like it was
Yeah,
just a
it was interesting
drab
that because
end.
I think after Man City, we were all on such a high. And I think this is football, right? The way momentum and emotions swing. And then you go to post Newcastle and it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I am intrigued, actually, like from your job as a journalist. What is this period like for you? Because I've seen you're still putting out articles and you're still working. But how is it for you? Because for me as a fan, I enjoy these little breaks, especially as a match going
Yeah.
fan, where, again, not to sound ungrateful, but it does get quite tiring and emotionally draining.
Yeah, I mean the kind of the weird nature of it is when there's so many games, like you guys try and ordinarily work a sort of 5-day week. So, 4 of those days when there's 2 games a week are, a press conference or a match, which gives little room for sort of anything else really. Like your diary is kind of set for itself. So now it does give you an opportunity to kind of do other things and write about other things. I mean, today I did a piece on sort of Kieran Tierney as like an emergency left wing option, which is probably
The
something I
Bale
didn't think
reincarnation arc.
yeah, which is probably something I didn't think I'd be writing about earlier on in the season. And yeah, and also, I mean, you can get a few days off. Like I've got a couple of days off this week, which due back to take from a busy sort of run. So yeah, it offers chance for like reflection, maybe something a bit different to what you're doing, because kind of when you're in that swing of press conference match, everything is kind of so formulaic in the way it's done, whereas now is a kind of a chance to take stock and actually look at things from a wider perspective. And I know it hasn't even been a week since the Newcastle game, but it feels like that was ages ago. I don't know what that feels like. And Girona feels like that was months ago. I don't know. The season feels like it's been long. In January, I think it was 9 games in January, which is just mad. I was looking at it, and there was 9 games in January, and there's now only 7 games. Well, Arsenal will have 7 games before the start of March. So
Wow, that's
that
crazy.
is kind of how much the schedule has flipped.
And even the next 2 weeks, obviously, it's Leicester this weekend and West Ham. I can't remember the last time we just had one game a week. And then I know it's
Yeah,
Forest midweek after that, but even that is just like, I can't wait. That feels and sounds great.
I know, and that is what I think. It was sort of mentioned at the time about finishing in that top 8 of the Champions League, but you look at like City and Real Madrid tonight, which I'm delighted to watch. That would be great. But if you were thinking you were in Arsenal's situation, you'd be like, another sort of European game, possibly away from home, trying to get yourself up for that. Like, I think that was just such a big thing for Arsenal, getting in that top 8 and just missing 2 games. Like, the calendar looks so much kinder for it.
Yeah, and I know this is going off topic a bit, but you just put something in my head, actually. Like, match day 8 of the Champions League against Girona. I don't know about you, but I was keeping an eye on the moving table, and there was one point in the night where it looked like we were 5th or 6th. And you're kind of going through the permutations, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, we may end up getting one of these in the round of in the quarters anyway, in terms of Man Cities, your Real Madrids and stuff. But at one point in the night, it did look like we could have maybe got one of them in the round of 16. So, yeah, we did well to finish. Was it third in the end?
Third in the end, yeah, which is a decent going, I think, considering everything that's gone on this season. Kind of didn't didn't really have much drama in that sort of Champions League. And I mean, there was a little moments where it looked like quite dicey, but on the whole, kind of got through pretty comfortably, which is something surprising given everything that's gone on.
Yeah. Before we get into recapping the topics I said at the start, Juventus, PSV, Feyenoord, Milan are our potential opponents, right? From the fan perspective, would you have a preference?
From the fan perspective, yeah. I mean, I've been to Eindhoven twice, I think. Yeah, twice, I think. I went years and years ago. I went to Milan. I went to the San Siro to watch a game years and years ago. So I would quite like to go there. I think if I could pick, I'd probably go Feyenoord and to go to I think it's called the De Kuip, is it? Their stadium there. It
Yep.
looks like unreal.
The Timber brothers facing off.
Yeah, I just think that'd be a great proper like experience to go to that sort of ground.
For me, it's any excuse to stop off in Amsterdam. So yeah,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, I would not be upset about going back to Eindhoven. Like, it's a really easy trip, and I think if you're a fan, you could go sort of Amsterdam for a night and then go Eindhoven for the game, or you could even get back after the game. Like, it's pretty close. It's a good stadium. The actual Eindhoven itself was a nice place to stay, so I wouldn't be opposed to that. And you'd back Arsenal to win it, but I think for a new experience, I think Feyenoord would be quite cool.
Yeah, I think so.
And who's the other one? Juve? Oof, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's Juventus, PSV, Feyenoord, Milan, one of them four.
Juve feels like that might be a bit of a tough game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still back us, but it feels like it would be tougher than the others, right? And Thiago Motta's their manager. He's obviously tactically astute.
Yeah.
Just avoid.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that sort of. I'm getting flashbacks to Porto last season and a sort of dark
too much energy expended. Don't need that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fair play. Right, transfer window. We have to talk about it. Like I said, this is my perspective and the way I'm kind of interpreting the general noise around social media. Like, one end of the spectrum, let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, the people at the one end, like I said, Cronkies are a disgrace. They've let Arteta down, this, that. And the other side of it is the people that are calm, fine. I don't think there's a right or wrong. Just curious on, again, I'm really interested in your fan perspective, but then the kind of journalistic hat on, and I'm conscious of the kind of information you may get. And obviously you cover Arteta's presses and stuff like that. How would you assess Arsenal's January window, and how much of it do you think was influenced by PSR summer strategic planning versus they're just not being the right fit that they actually wanted in January?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one because I don't think you can argue that Arsenal didn't need a forward or a striker. I mean, and Arteta was pretty abundantly clear on it, and I think his actual words around it got stronger as the window went on. I think at the start of the window he was pretty relaxed on it, sort of viewed it as an opportunity. And then when Jesus got injured, I think his tone shifted quite a bit, which is why it was a surprise they didn't get anyone in. And you kind of see both sides of the argument, because I think from one respect, given how Arsenal have operated in the past, I think back to that Aubameyang window, January 2022, I think it was, where they let him go for free and didn't get anyone in. And, the belief then was that they wanted to wait. We found out they wanted to wait for Jesus. That was the striker they wanted. They kept the powder dry. And even in that instance, you have the argument where, well, you missed out on Champions League football because you didn't get a striker. But then Arsenal would say, look, we got Jesus and we almost won the title. So it's that balance between looking short and long term. I think Watkins as a deal kind of made sense. I think it came about with Villa obviously needed. I had PSR concerns and we're going to sell one of Watkins or Duran. And I think Arsenal, the sort of view was that they could do a deal for sort of 40 million. I think Villa were thinking nearer 60, which is what they got for Duran. And kind of when that Duran move went through, it basically made Watkins almost impossible to do. I think there was no way Villa were going to lose both in one window. And from there, Arsenal, who are you looking at really? And if you look around the sort of January window, I struggle to see a striker who moved where I would have gone, they should have got him in. Why didn't they go and get him? People will say Mateus Tell, maybe. And the one I always wondered about was Colin Mwani.
You did throw Duran's name in on
Duran,
the last podcast.
Duran was the one I would have picked. I mean, when the Watkins stuff came out, I was like, mate, Duran's the one I would have gone for. I think he would have been such a good fit. But Watkins, we know they've liked for a long time. So you guess you're left in that situation now where it is it is a kind of gamble. And for me, I kind of accept the decision if in this, both from a journalist and a fan really, if in the summer you get who you want. I think that is always where the sort of the proof is in the pudding. And when they let Aubameyang go and they got Jesus, you kind of went, oh, okay, you know, Jesus is who you really wanted, and then you went and fought for the title. And this time, if they wait and they go and get an Isak or a Sesko, you kind of go, okay, fair enough, that was worth the wait. But if you do that and then you don't get who you want, the argument will be, well, then, well, you've kind of wasted, you know, you've wasted 2 windows there. And particularly with the forward search, you know, they didn't get one in the summer, didn't get one in January. You can't really go 3 windows without getting who you want. And that'll be where it is. But I think that'll be the summer will be the proof of what this window sort of was. But I don't think you can't argue that it wasn't a gamble not to get anyone in. You're basically relying on Havertz to sort of lead the line for 4 months.
Yeah, and well, I guess your piece today, not to go into too much detail because people go and read it, but yeah, you've spoke there about the options, right? And the fact that we are having conversations where we may have to think of Kieran Tierney as a wide option. He came on, didn't he? Was it the North London
derby?
There's
I think he might have done it Spurs. He definitely did it against Zagreb. He might have done it against Spurs. Yeah, as a kind of emergency left wing option. I mean, I kind of get it to a degree. Because he can't play as the left back Arteta wants. You know, he's not going to do that inverted role. And I don't know, he's decent cross, good on the overlap. I'm more kind of look at it as an option for like 50. If there's like just those 20 minutes where you can get some, you know, you can get Trossard off the pitch, you know, and save his legs a little bit. Have you got someone in there who could do a job for 20 minutes? And I kind of feel like maybe that might be it for him, which is a bit mad given where his Arsenal career started, that we're now looking at his last 6 months as like, oh, can you just do a job on the left wing?
I'm telling you, it's the Gareth Bale repositioning right in front of our eyes. It's happening. I'm really torn, you know. I thought we needed a forward in the summer anyway, but a comment you said there that stuck with me in the summer was, even in the summer, I didn't look at any centre forwards that moved with envy, and even wide forwards. And that's how I tried to make peace with it going into the season, this season. And I mean, last January, I don't think we got anyone in, did we? It was the season before we got Yukivi or Jorginho and all of them. But yeah, I'm really torn because even Ollie Watkins, if I'm being totally honest, I think he's someone that from a numbers perspective would have been great to manage this season. But the way I'm looking at that forward group is I think we're going to need a top class left winger and a top class centre forward anyway. And if you can't get that in January, what would bringing Watkins in January mean for the summer? Is it then we don't get someone that, I don't know who the name may be, that could be that clear upgrade, that clear differential profile to Havertz? And it is risky because I don't think you're writing off this season, but I think you're making it quite unlikely that we're able to potentially capitalize on it if Liverpool slip up. And again, me personally, in the Champions League, when we got knocked out against Bayern Munich last season, Arteta was quite clear on what we were lacking in the forward area, right? And I think as a unit, we're weaker than we were 12 months ago by injuries and everything. And I don't see anything that's made me think, oh yeah, we can go on and win the Champions League. Whereas I think a lot of fans are kind of in that boat of, oh, it's fine, we'll just go win the Champions League. Whereas I still think offensively we're short, but it puts a hell of a lot of pressure on the summer now, because if they don't deliver those top class players that can come in and elevate the attack, then I think there will be riots. And I think it's interesting where we are, because when we got Trossard in, I think we were at a level where you could get that caliber of player that may be a bit inconsistent, but will be able to contribute output wise. Whereas now I think we are looking for that sure thing, right? Someone that can just come in, no inconsistencies, minimum 8 out of 10 performance levels. And that's a small pool of players. So I'm really torn, because I think on one perspective, the numbers are a joke. I mean, it's literally Martinelli, who got injured against Newcastle, Trossard, Waneri, whose progression has been bumped faster than I think they would have liked. And who's the one? Oh, Kai Havertz, who we'll talk about a bit later, actually. So yeah, I'm really torn. I think on one hand, I kind of get it. You don't want to get anyone in as a body, but I think from just a pure bodies and numbers perspective, we've left really short. And even what you said there about Tel and Kolo Muani, like I would have liked them, but only on a loan. Like I think the numbers being touted for Tel is quite a lot in terms of loan fees. And even, I mean, would he really get in, assuming Martinelli is back soon in a month. Would he really play consistently ahead of Trossard,
But
Martinelli?
don't feel like he'd move the needle. And to be fair to Arteta, one thing he did say was like he doesn't want a body.
He did.
Because there is an argument. I think people have said like, I think you do literally need a body, like you are that short. But he's always been pretty clear on that. Like he doesn't want someone to make up the sort of numbers. And I think, to be fair, I think Bild were reporting that the loan fee for Tell was like 12 million euros for 6
That's
months.
a lot.
So it's a lot of money, for a player if you're not really that sure on it, to go and do it. And even Watkins, I personally wasn't hugely enamored with it. I don't know. I described it as like a now signing rather than like a wow signing. Like I kind of
like
got
that,
it
yep.
for like 18 months. This is your guy, he's going to get you the goals. But like I couldn't have imagined. I don't know. I think for the fan base in terms of that number 9 signing, I don't know if it would have been the sort of player where they go, oh wow, we've gone and done it. Last, we've gone and spent big money on someone. But he might have actually been a really good fit. But I don't think it would have had that same thing as like an Isak, obviously, and even like a Sesko. I kind of think the sort of mystique around him and his age profile and the kind of striker he is would have been more exciting. And given where they are in the league, and also in lesser to extent the other competitions, kind of, I don't know, Watkins would have almost made more sense if you were in Liverpool's position where you were sort of so close to it and you're like, we've got to take this chance. It's our best chance to win the league. It's not like you're in a great position in the league. So that was an interesting one for me. I wasn't massively sold on it. And like you, I'd worry if you bought Watkins, you then get to the summer, and if you still want the forward where you've got a 29-year-old Ollie Watkins who you've just paid good money for, you can't sell Jesus because he's out with a knee injury. So I don't know where does that leave you sort of room to maneuver. So as you said, it'll all be on the summer. And I mean, the transfer windows always have loads of scrutiny from fan bases, and I don't have any different. But I do think, I don't know how you found it, but I feel like the reaction's been a bit more measured this time on social media. Like I don't feel like the uproar has been quite as manic as before. Maybe that's because they've got a bit of credit in the bank for deals they've done since that sort of Aubameyang window. But it didn't feel as mad as I thought it would be.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I've consciously detached from social media a little bit, so I've not been as engaged in Twitter as I perhaps usually am. But I've definitely seen the two extremes, which is what kind of made me bring it up. And even in my own friendship circles, just talking to people from the different side of things. But yeah, I think the summer is shaping up. I mean, there's rumors that we'll get that. Is it Garcia, the goalkeeper? Zubamendi's been spoken about. We're talking about needing a wide forward, a centre forward. I mean, what is the outlay going to be? Is it going to be like the summer when we got Rice, Havertz, Timber? Raya was on loan, wasn't he? And then we got him officially later. But shaping up to be a big and busy one. But yeah, I think, again, what I look at, it's almost like I try not to get wedded to names. And it's almost like I think as a team and as a structured group, we are on the cusp of being able to blow teams away. I think the way we move from goalkeeper to the final third is unbelievable, and the way we dominate territory. But we're now in a position where, when Liverpool went and plucked like Alisson, Van Dijk, those players to just completely maximize what you're doing as a football team, I think that's what we're looking for in the attack now. And Watkins would have covered Havertz well, would have offered a nice profile. I look at the things we consistently struggle against in those deep blocks, your Newcastles, the Inter Milan game. Like, I want someone that can create something out of nothing, shift the ball, create a yard. Like, I'm not trying to discredit Watkins, but does he give you that? I'm not sure. So yeah, I'm really torn between thinking we have left ourselves short, but there's a lot of emphasis on the summer.
What you're saying is that you want John Duran. That's what you're saying.
I don't know
you
if I
want
said
John
this.
Duran.
I don't know if I said this to you off air or at all in the last episode, but I'm not his biggest fan. I think his bangers will dry up, and I'm not so sold on his all-round game. But well, we'll see. I mean, fair play to him. Generational wealth move that.
Yeah.
I've got no issues with that. The game is the game. Newcastle. I mean, well, just on that note, for anyone listening, let me know in the comments your thoughts. Like I said, the transfer window feels like it has divided opinion. But Simon, you've been more engaged on socials. If it is a bit more measured, I'm really intrigued to see. So yeah, let me know in the comments where your head is at post window and what you think we'll actually do in the summer. Newcastle. I'm curious on this one in terms of, before we get to the outcome, how are you feeling going into the game? Because again, being totally transparent, after the first leg, I like talking in terms of probabilities. after the first leg, I was like, 5% chance we go through. We then beat Man City 5-1. Newcastle lose back-to-back home games. And I'm not saying it went up to like 70% we're going to do them, but it definitely went up to a 40%. So I was feeling all right going into it. And obviously, we know how it panned out. How are you feeling going into it?
Yeah, a weird one, because just the gap between the two legs was, I mean, Arsenal played 7 games in between those games. Beat Man City, beat Spurs. Like, the kind of mood at the two clubs had shifted pretty dramatically. I think obviously Newcastle had difficult results. Obviously the Fulham game, but Bournemouth, went and won 4-1, which is literally the result that Arsenal needed with a depleted team with injuries. So I kind of felt, after that first leg, my sort of feelings was like, oh, that's the tie, pretty much done. But I was like, it's not done to the extent where, not that Arteta would do this anyway, where you could go there and be like, oh, let's just sort of mass rotate and rest everyone. There was the game was still live enough. There was a chance that they could do it. And I kind of probably lulled myself in thinking, well, maybe, it could be a sort of special result, and sort of forgetting that Newcastle are so good against Arsenal in terms of how they set up.
Funny that it is always against us, isn't it?
And the atmosphere as well, I've been to a few games with some great atmosphere, but it was absolutely rocking, as you'd expect.
How did it compare to some of the games and grounds you've been to? Because I wasn't there in person, but on the telly, it sounded raw.
Like the first 15 minutes was like, absolutely, it was so loud. And it was kind of loud like 15 minutes before kickoff, like everyone was in their seat already. And Arsenal, I think, were a bit shaky early on, actually, all over the sort of pitch. And then it actually kind of petered out a bit when the second goal went in, I think, because kind of everyone knew the game was done. I mean, Arteta took off Odegaard, didn't he, and Trossard. Yeah. The atmosphere actually simmered down a bit. I still think the best atmosphere I've ever been to, probably begrudgingly, is 2021-22 season, when Spurs beat Arsenal 3-0 on the Thursday night to basically get Champions League. That was generally the noise that day was like something else. Basically like a cup final for both teams. So the away fans were so loud. The home fans was
and that
crazy.
Trumped the Newcastle game, did it? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I still think that's the best. I don't think I've had better than that. But that was right up there. And then I think Arsenal, you kind of just realise, actually, when the game sort of got going and started, you were like, oh, actually, this is a mountain to climb, isn't it? I thought Isak was brilliant again. Like, I can't think of a striker who causes Gabriel and Saliba more problems than him. Like, all 3 games this season, he's been so effective. Compare that with how they dealt with Haaland, it was like chalk and cheese. And it was always going to be about the first goal, I thought, in that game. Like, if Arsenal got the first goal, maybe the atmosphere would change. Suddenly it gets a bit nervous. Like, there were a lot of Newcastle fans around, and there was some of the media up there, Newcastle fans, and they were sort of really nervous.
Interesting.
And then when the team came out and it was like a back 5, they were like, oh God, is he overthinking it? What's he doing? Like, I think that kind of, because they're so close and they want it so much, rather than just stepping back objectively and being like, you're 2-0 up at home, like, you'll be fine. And I think when that first goal went in, that was always going to be the moment. And it was just cruel that it was in the space of, 45, 50 seconds that Odegaard hits the post, and then Newcastle hit the woodwork but scored the rebound. So, I probably, like you, kind of had more expectations than I did at full time on the first leg. But then once the second leg kicked off, realised that, this is going to be tough.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We were well beat, right? But like that 45 seconds you talk about there, like, that is my takeaway in terms of cup competitions. And I'm not trying to say it was very similar, but some similarities I do draw is against Bayern last year. Like, we had a couple of chances we didn't take, and they took theirs. And it was the same in the first leg against Newcastle, right? People can debate the kind of whole 90 minutes, but the fact and the reality is we had chances we didn't take. Newcastle took theirs. And we put ourselves with an uphill battle in the second leg. And again, like the Odegaard one, I do think it was a hard chance the way the ball was rolling and stuff. But if it goes 1 or 2 yards the other side of the post, you never know what kind of game we have in our hands. And it is worth saying, like, they did have the ball in the back of the net. Prior to that, it was offside. But Isak's a weird one. he doesn't look like he should be as physically strong as he is, because he's quite lanky and skinny
quite
looking,
wiry,
isn't
he? He's like,
yeah, but I mean, I'm jumping a bit here, but do you think he is actually attainable in the summer?
I struggle to see how he would be.
Me too, to be
I
honest.
guess maybe if they're not in the Champions League, you'll bring in some sort of financial constraints. But even then, if I'm Newcastle, I'm selling anyone else other than Isak. Even like Bruno, because I just think there's no. I look around and I think you could probably find someone like Bruno. You could probably find someone like Anthony Gordon. I just think it's so rare to get like number 9s like Isak. And if I was Newcastle, he'd be the last one I'd be selling. So the only way I could sort of see it is if they were out of the Champions League, they've got financial constraints. He's really pushing for the move. I just think it'll be so difficult to do. But I guess if you're Arsenal and he's the one you really want, you've got to try, try and have a go at it. But yeah, for me, I just look at it and think it's going to be so hard to do that. And maybe you've missed a boat and Sociedad was the time to get him. But that's, hindsight being 2020.
Of course, and this is where I think a lot of the fans are of the perspective of, is history repeating ourselves with Sesko? I know they're different profiles, but do you just go and get that guy now before he's potentially that 150 million player in 18 months to 2 years, right? So be interesting to see what we do there. I am curious on this. Like, I don't know, again, just from, I guess, more the journalistic perspective where you cover the press conferences and stuff. Did you ever get a feel for how Arsenal kind of viewed the EFL Cup internally in terms of a priority, or?
I think Arteta took it pretty seriously, to be fair. I mean, he doesn't write off any game. Like, it's just the way he is. He never ever does. I mean, we sort of learnt this over the years with him quite fairly quickly. But he never throws a game in terms of he'll put 11 kids out. Even in the Carabao Cup, it's a rotated team, but it's a strong team. And I always think as well, I remember us going to cover a game, I think it was last year in the Champions League, that PSV Eindhoven away, which was the last group game, and it was the most dead rubber of dead rubbers. It was Arsenal top, PSV was second, playing each other. No matter what happened, that was going to be the order. So we had all sort of assumed, he's going to play loads of kids and take everyone no, strong team. Last half an hour, he's bringing Rice off the bench, Odegaard off the bench.
I remember that because I was in the away end, and I remember we were like, "What's he doing?"
I know, and even I can think last season in the Carabao Cup when they were losing at Newcastle, he's throwing on Odegaard and Saka trying to sort of save the game. And then to an extent, he did that against Newcastle where he brought Winery on instead of Sterling. And you could have maybe thought maybe just save Ethan. He's only 17, just get Raheem on. But they did when it went to 4-0 aggregate. He did, take people off and kind of be sensible. But he just doesn't have that mindset where he will disregard anything. And I kind of think that's the same with the EFL Cup. Compare that to sort of Wenger teams where he would happily play 18 teenagers. There's just no way
Fran Marina special.
That. Yeah, there's just no way Arteta would do that. I think he values sort of winning too much. And I do think it would have been a sort of valuable, trophy to win in the sort of short term. So I think they did take it seriously, and it was the same even in the FA Cup with United. Again, he's put a strong team out.
Yeah, how do you kind of assess the outcomes and the takeaways? More on the Newcastle semi-final than the Man United one, to be honest, because like you said, it did put a strong team out for both. And I mean, do Newcastle have our number? They've beaten us 3 times this season. I mean, we battered them
not even
year.
conceded as well, have they? Not even conceded. Yeah, I kind of, it just feels like a tie that was. I mean, Arteta loves saying this, but the game's decided in both boxes.
Yeah,
and Newcastle were better in the box than Arsenal, really. In terms of chances created across the 2 legs, there probably wasn't loads of differences.
People won't like this, but I have seen the expected goals over the tie, and I know people cringe. It was pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first leg is where the tie was lost, really, wasn't it? And Arteta did get asked that post-match. He kind of sort of swerved around it and said, we made it very difficult. But if you look back to that game, Timber, that corner heads over the bar, Martinelli hits the post, Havertz has some good chances. And that was really where the game was lost, losing 2-0 at home. I think there was a stat pre-game, was it, that I think only once in League Cup history has someone come back from 2 goals down and got through, and no one's ever done it when they've lost at home by 2 goals. So that kind of set the tone of what you're trying to do is historically pretty much impossible. So yeah, I don't think there was like loads different between the two teams. Certainly not in the first leg. Second leg, I think Newcastle were the better team, but they are proving to be a really difficult team to play, and they're just a tough team to play against, I think.
But
they're
they
just
do
really well set up, like
yeah, and I don't know if this
physical.
is the kind of internal fan bias, but they do feel like they really raised their game against us as well. I think you spoke about that Tottenham game a few years ago. I was at the one at St James's Park that Monday night, and that almost felt like the birth of a forced rivalry, which was a bit of a one-sided one, but is now making me kind of hate them.
I remember that game because I remember I was watching before the second leg of this week. I watched the sort of documentary clip, when the changing room after the game.
Do you want to play Champions League?
Yeah, Arteta goes absolutely mad when they've basically blown it. And he's talking about, I'll eat all the shit for you guys. I'll take it at all. Because he doesn't actually, and it's always interesting, I find, he doesn't actually go that mad after the Spurs game. And I think that's because he kind of knows actually it's still in their hands if they go and, get the result of Newcastle. But after Newcastle, I mean, my word, he just absolutely explodes. And I'm sure there was some sort of stat doing the rounds before this game that I think Newcastle had like 4 wins out of their last 7 against Arsenal. And then they'd got that many wins in their previous 45 games against them. So wow. It's all of a sudden in this sort of Eddie Howe era that they've turned a corner. And still got another game against them this season, which is probably going to be interesting and spicy. And yeah, I think it's a good little rivalry. I mean, in terms of, for Arsenal, it's tough, but in terms of the actual spice of the fixture, I do enjoy it.
Yeah, no, you are right. And to be fair, it's interesting because, like I said, I think it was around 12 months ago. I feel like it was February time. We absolutely battered them 4-1 at the Emirates.
I feel like that was fueled a lot by the first game, I think, at St. James's.
100%.
Because they came absolutely flying out the traps that day.
But prior to that, I mean, I know I spoke about that year we were going for top 4 and they beat us that Monday night, but there was one game in January 2023, I think it was, and that was a 0-0, and I always reference that game, and it was Eddie Howe and Sean Dyche at the time under Everton that almost set the template of how to mitigate Arsenal's threat with these kind of mid blocks and low blocks, because we used to blow teams away, create space for fun, and I think they set that template that we now consistently see us struggle
against. Was that the game
where
it was like 52 minutes ball in play or something? It was something wild. It was like, I can remember that game. And there was Arteta, I think, was going at Tyndall a bit on the touchline, and I remember that game.
I think there's definitely a bit of needle between the managers and the coaching staff as well. Like, I don't know if you would have seen this because you were in the ground, but the camera panned to Arteta, and when the managers do the handshake at the end, it was like no verbal well done. It was like a reluctant smile and a handshake, and then off you go. But yeah, just before we move on to the next section in terms of Dubai, I guess the one you kind of touched on it there, right? What another downside and annoyance from that game was Martinelli got injured. The one thing I want to focus on is what you said. Waneri came on ahead of Sterling, so Leicester coming up is the right wing spot Waneri's, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I even think when everyone is obviously when Martinelli was fit, I would have had him probably overhead of Martinelli on the right, maybe. I think Martinelli was good against City, and I think there is that attraction, certainly off the ball. I think he's defensively more astute than Waneri. But going forward, I think Waneri is the best like-for-like replacement for Saka. And I mean, his development's been crazy. Like, he basically was like the Odegaard backup at the start of the season. Now you're like, he's probably the best sort of right wing backup now. And I think he could have a great little run there. I'm really excited to see how he goes. And I mean, maybe even up front. I know Arteta sort of said that was more of a long-term thing, but possibility playing there a bit.
I've heard you kind of question him a bit more on that, haven't you?
Yeah, I just wonder whether, like, I don't know. I kind of think like they're going to have to do something now at points, change it up there. He's obviously done it a bit in the academy. I think his like the finish he's got at the moment is like, it's kind of weird because he's 17, but like a bit of a signature finish, isn't it? That sort of
to do that at 17 with the power and technique that's required consistently, I think that's frightening to be able to have that.
I mean, his numbers are crazy. Like, I mean, I think I can't remember how many he needs before. I think is it sort of 4 or 5 goals he needs, and he'll have got the most goals by someone under the age of 18 for like a Premier League team. Like he's basically only Rooney and Owen have done better at this age.
Wow. I mean, he's going to get a run in the team now, isn't he?
Well, exactly. I mean, Arteta got asked about it, and he wasn't sort of aware of it. And it was quite interesting when he was leaving the press conference. He like sort of came back to the person who asked it, like, so is it like any competition that he just got to score these goals and he'll get the record? And it was a bit like, I wonder if Arteta's like, oh, that's quite interesting. Like,
oh, that's hilarious. I
sort
didn't
of maybe
that.
like a bit of a fuel for Wanera. I don't know, like, but yeah, I mean, the area that he's in, we're basically talking about sort of Rooney, Owen levels of like, this is how good this kid is.
Okay.
And for me, yeah, he'd be my right wing option, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't make up the timing, could you? Martinelli getting injured a few days after the window shut. We'll never know this, but had that happened when Jesus went out injured, I do wonder if they would have then got to the point of, yeah, we need a body. But yeah, we'll never know that. Yeah, attention turns to Dubai. I think it's become a bit of a meme among the fan base, hasn't it? But we obviously know the impact it had last year, where we came back from Dubai. I think the first game was Palace. We saw Rice on corners, which we hadn't seen prior to that. We then went on an amazing run. What was it? Lost to Villa, drew against City. I think that was it, right?
Yeah, and the rest were 16 out of 18 wins in the league.
Is history going to repeat itself?
I don't feel they're in as good a position as when they were coming back from Dubai last time. I mean, having Saka fit was obviously a big bonus. I do think it is a good chance to get a break, though. Yeah, I think they needed it. I think it was 11 games in 36 days from New Year's Day. And I mean, touch a bit there on Rice and corners like that. That is one of the things that they will get is set pieces. And it's interesting when you sort of, often when we get to speak to players, the sort of thing people ask is like, oh, what's the secret? Or, how do you do it? How do you work on it? Like, well, we don't actually get that much time to work on set pieces because it's basically game, recovery, prep, game. When they're playing twice a week, there's not much time to do it. Whereas now they'll have had 6 days in Dubai. You can actually kind of drill some new set pieces, new routines. So that'll be interesting. And hopefully just get a bit of a reset, I think, mentally as much as anything.
Yeah. One thing you said
and that could almost be possibly one of the biggest positives from Dubai is that I know, talk about it in the fan base, this mystique around Dubai and, he came back last summer. Like that is, for Arteta, that should be an easy thing to play in. Like, we went away last season, guys, and we came back, you saw how good it was. Almost like a placebo effect of basically, well, this is what happens when we go away, guys. We come back and we hit the ground running, and it's quite a nice first fixture to feed into that mindset. So I do think there is almost a value just in the sense mentally what it could do to players.
100%. I think it's also just a common sense thing. Like, just think of yourself and anyone listening in any facet of life when you're in work and you just feel tired. Like these are, I know they're footballers. People think of them as robots, but they're still humans. And like you said, the stat there on how many games there's been, and it must have been mentally, emotionally taxing, especially the contrast of the Man City and Newcastle games. Like that would have taken a toll. And I just think any facet of life, you're mentally tired, you're physically tired, you go away, you come back, you feel refreshed. I think sometimes
a holiday. I know they're not having a holiday, but or a mini retirement, as Gary Neville would call it.
Build your life around mini retirements. But even there, like we touched on the set pieces, I think the one thing that you touched on there, like I've heard it as well, the players saying, yeah, it is literally play, recover. And I think one thing we did last season, which I think kind of went under the radar a bit, but that was the period after where I know we started battering teams, but like we did tweak things tactically as well as implementing the set pieces. Where like Kivior was the one on the outside of the left, on the left back role where he was kind of playing inverted in periods and kind of holding the outside. We inverted from the right, which I'd never seen us before Dubai, where White was actually going in. There were really nice triangles. I remember watching the Burnley game, like White, Odegaard, Saka. Even though it was the same trio and triangle, the way they were moving within spaces, I'd never seen that prior to Dubai. So I think there are details that, like you said, they're going to get the time to work on. And hopefully we see something a bit different. Because I think in my one constructive criticism of Arteta is I think absolutely phenomenal in his coaching, but I do think I would like to see a bit of diversity in the attacking third, in the way we approach and our patterns of play, where I think we've got to a point where in certain game states we are reliant on individual brilliance that we don't have. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what tweaks we make according to what we do in Dubai. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they come back with. One thing that's been doing the rounds on Twitter. So now there is a fan that is out in Dubai and has supposedly said that he was at Arsenal's training session, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's seen that Kai Havertz supposedly went off injured and hasn't been pictured in training photos since. Like, must caveat this is Twitter, but I mean, have you heard any information on this?
I've not heard anything yet, but we'll try and find out, as I'm sure many of my other colleagues are trying to find out. Yeah, I mean,
to timestamp this. This is we are recording
in the lunchtime on
Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those where it's kind of just come out of nowhere a bit. I mean, I know there were fans at the session yesterday, so I mean, in theory, someone could have seen something and reported it. But this is, I mean, this is, and just in terms of like the job, this is kind of one of the difficult facets of the job where things in the social media age, like rumors fly around so much. Like I can remember, obviously we don't know with Havertz, but do you remember early on in the season, there was all this talk that Calafiori had done his knee and he was like in tears and in agony. And then I think we heard from Arteta 2 days later and it was like, no, he's fine.
Yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, so we just kind of have to wait and see. I mean, the only thing you would hope with Havertz, if he has gone off, is that like, we kind of touched on a bit, but he is basically the only centre forward. So if he felt any slight twinge, you'd be like, no, don't worry, just go sit out for a bit. You would take every precaution. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out in the next few days. So if not, we'll hear from Arteta on Friday. Arteta will say some words to us on Friday. Whether that clears up the situation is a different matter. But I guess it kind of highlights the situation Arsenal are in, doesn't it? Like, how precarious it is that if Havertz goes down, I don't know where
it's so risky.
Where do you go?
I mean, the one man I do not envy is was it Jason Hayter? You said was the interim.
Jason Hayter, yeah.
Yeah. I do not envy him because that job, it's risk management, right? It's again what we've covered. It's that balance between we need someone in, but what does that mean for our future planning? And I mean, this is why they get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. But it is incredibly risky now. I think if Havertz goes, our season is done, which is ironic considering some of the general narrative around Havertz as a football player, right? So
yeah.
I am curious.
I always think, sorry, when you talk about Jason Ato and like sporting directors, there's always that thing where it's like, just get a body in, and it's like, well, the fee for this body is 10 million euros, 12 million euros, and then I need to pay their wages. It's like, in any other walk of life, it's just kind of mad, the figures you talk about. Like, just get a body in. Well, how much is it? It's 12 million euros. Yeah, just do it. Just get it done. Don't get it in.
And I think this is the thing as well. Like, Mikel Merino, I think, is another player that divides fans' opinions, right? And people are like, get a body, but sell Merino, he's shit. It's like, well, what do you want? And I think I'm personally in a position where I think if Jesus was fit and available, I'd be looking to, can we replenish the attacking depth and sell Trossard, Jesus in the summer and try and upgrade those? And again, like Jesus, if he's fit and available, is a body that was underperforming, even though he looked like he was getting into a bit of a groove. Trossard, I think, has been better recently, but I still think is quite inconsistent for the level we want. And again, the Merino one is the biggest yardstick for me because all I see is criticism of him. But then I see the same people saying you must get a body in, and it's like, well, what if that body is another Merino in attack in your eyes? Like, yeah,
I know that is the hardest thing. I think is kind of, and you got to think as well for Jason Ato, who's obviously the interim sporting director. I'm sure he would have loved nothing more than to deliver the striker in January. Like when you're pitching to get the job full time, if you could have rocked up and been like, "Look, here is the centre forward, give me the job."
I present an Isaac.
Yes, here you go. Here's how give me the job now. But then he's also got a balance between, the long term view of the club and what they want to do in the summer. So it is such a difficult position. But yeah, kind of we'll see what comes of this Havertz sort of whether there is anything in it. But I do think, even if it comes to nothing and Havertz absolutely fine, which I'm sure everyone hopes, I think what it does highlight is the precarious nature where Arsenal will be holding their breath. In any match when Havertz goes down, the whole stadium will just be holding their breath, being like, oh my God, please get up.
Yeah, because then it just bumps. I mean, we'll either have to do Trossard there or, like you said, Waneri
or something.
But then that bumps Sterling up the pecking order, right?
Because that's the thing. Like, even with Waneri, he's been great on the right wing, but you now have one less central number 8 player. So
playing with fire. I'm curious on that. How with Jason Ato as the interim, like how difficult would it have been for Arsenal with Edu leaving and stuff? Do you have any idea in terms of what impact that would have had in terms of governance and processes and stuff?
Well, in terms they've always said that the plans were already set in place anyway, and I guess the sort of the way the Zubimendi's moving towards being done in the summer would suggest that like it's not solely reliant on the sporting director, and kind of the way the model has been constructed is that it's not set on one piece being in place, that it all falls apart. So, even if it was someone else who'd left, like a Richard Garlick, it kind of needs to function when everyone's still there. And Arteta has been pretty clear. I mean, he's had it a few times where we've sort of asked him, so we haven't got a sporting director. And he's like, no, we do. Jason Ato is the interim sporting director. And his power is as if he's acting as if a sporting director. So he's not, his power isn't less than it would be if he was a full-time. He's basically doing the job as if he has it. He just doesn't have it permanently, if he will get it or not. So they've kind of still tried to function normally, and the plans will have been done. Recruitment team will have said who they wanted. I think you could probably rightly argue, I mean, Edu's track record of Nous, could he have maybe got something in over line with? Could he have different contacts, different people? I don't know. But I think Arsenal were, and Arteta were kind of happy with the recruitment setup and pretty strong on, this is how it's run. Plans are in place. It's not going to be disrupted. So yeah.
Fair play. And I think that ties it all in nicely for the final question before we get out of here. What do you think? Well, final two questions. What do you think Arsenal's internal expectations will be for the rest of the season now? Do you think they will be of the opinion and belief that we can capitalise on Liverpool, go and mount a title challenge, compete in the Champions League? Or do you think it is a bit more of it's mitigating circumstances in how we assess the rest of the season?
I still think they'll believe they can do it 100%, I think. Just given because... look at the way other teams have been hit by injuries. Spurs worse than anyone. Arsenal, City, Liverpool haven't really had that tough run of being without key players, and there's still like a decent amount of games to go. There's a long way to go, and I still think Arsenal. If I would imagine internally, you'd be thinking it's been so difficult to get here. If we can just try and hang on, the schedule's eased a bit. You get to sort of April time, and you've hopefully got Saka back, Martinelli back, and you're still sort of in that fight. I think that's where you want to be. The fear I think you would have is over this next sort of 6-7 game stretch, whether you sort of the gap widens or it doesn't decrease. I look at Liverpool after they play Everton, which I think is a difficult game away. They play Wolves, and then they've got 3 games in 8 days. They've got Villa, Newcastle, and City.
Yeah,
those 3 games. I think if Liverpool come through that unscathed, it's going to be a tall order. But I think for us, they've just got to just stay in the fight, which they did very well last season. And City didn't slip, but they were there right to the end. I think that's what they need to be doing. And in the Champions League, it kind of depends on what sort of draw you get. But I do think they are. I always think they're quite well suited to European football, just because very good at home, don't concede many goals. Where they do lack, I think, is that sort of, like against Bayern, that sort of magic player off the bench to suddenly win you a tie. But in terms of like the way they're set up, I think they're very good for European football. So I don't think there's any chance that they'll be thinking, this season's off. And I guess the sort of, people can believe what they want about Watkins, whether how serious it was. But the fact they went for Watkins, I think, was an indication that they thought this season was still live. If you didn't, you wouldn't even bother for doing that. But I think they really did think there was something to be done. So. Yeah, I would be very surprised if internally they're thinking, nah, this season's done, we'll throw it in.
Yeah, fair play. I have got to say, domestically, I think this will piss some people off because people would just think, City have fallen off, why are we not top? But I think what Arteta and the coaching staff have done this season is unbelievable. I think you spoke there about the injuries to other sides, that they are not talking about being anywhere close to their objectives that they had prior to those circumstances. I don't think people can debate the red cards, but the fact and the reality is 4 halves with 10 men against some of the opposition that it was, the injuries, I don't think there's any other team in this league that would still be expected or judged on their primary objective without those circumstances that have happened. And if anything, it just makes me so confident for imagine if we have next season where we get those attackers, we have some injury luck that we had the last 2 seasons where maybe we were just not quite there. I think it's been an unbelievable coaching job. domestically in the Premier League. While there have been some flaws, I just think to still be in the conversation with everything that's happened is mind-blowing to me. And again, just to repeat myself from earlier, in Europe, I don't have that. I don't share quite the same feeling. I share the same feeling in terms of like the way we're set up structurally will be hard to beat, but I think teams in the Champions League take more risks, and we do see that variance level, which we seem to be on the wrong end of quite a lot. Like there's so many of those games like Fulham and other games where it was like, oh, they scored from one shot, and it just kept happening. And I feel like we may see that in the Champions League for some reason, and I just think we lack that little bit of quality in the final third. But like you said, you throw in Saka back in the mix, you never know. Final question is your own personal opinion. So you said about the club's perspective, but yeah, where's your head at in terms of the rest of the season?
I feel like in terms of the title race, we will know if it's a real race at the end of February. I think. I just look at Liverpool's run of games now. Everton away, City, Newcastle, Villa. I kind of think we'll know by then how Liverpool navigate that, whether we've got a race going on to it. And in the Champions League, have to see on the draw, but I think they can have a decent go at it. My fear would be I would worry about up top. We spoke about it in the Newcastle game, the games won in both boxes. I would worry in like a really crunch semi-final. Have you got enough to get you over the line? I'm not sure they do. I think defensively they could do a very good job, which they did, against Bayern. I would just think in those crunch moments, I don't feel like they've got enough. So yeah, that's my kind of feeling. I think we will know by the end of this month if we're going to have a proper title race. And in the Champions League, I kind of feel like a semi-final, quarter-final exit feels where it will go, just given where they are.
I feel very similar to me. I've got a horrible feeling that, last year I think, was it Bayern, Villa, Bayern, Wolves? And I remember, to be honest, the Wolves one was a great
Yeah, that was a
result.
huge game, wasn't it? I remember it was off the back of going out in Bayern, wasn't it? Yeah.
But that Villa game was sandwiched in between there. And I just think, especially as from a numbers perspective, we're weaker. I just worry that we'll get a tough. I mean, the quarterfinal, the way it's kind of mapped out, looks like if we get there, it'll be quite tough anyway. And I do worry that those two legs, I don't know what fixtures are in and around that, but that will take quite a lot out of the players, and we won't quite have the strength in depth to be able to navigate that period. But who knows? Hopefully we come back refreshed from Dubai and we go on and put together that run like last year. You never know in football. Simon, pleasure as always. Thanks for coming on. Where can people follow you on the socials to read all your great work?
Yeah, I'm on X at SR_Collings, or you can follow at Standard Sport for all the stuff from there. And yeah, thanks for having me on, mate.
Nice one. Pleasure. If you've enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments. Share your opinion on everything we've covered. The stream on YouTube. If you're watching, please drop it a like, goes a long way. And if you're listening on audio, please give it a 5-star review. I'll be back on Friday to preview the Leicester game. And like I said, we did pre-record this on Tuesday, the 11th at around lunchtime. This will be out later today. So if anything dates, you know why. Pleasure as always, Simon. Thanks again. Up the Arsenal.